Hello! Today I wanted to review Civil War. Not the film, which comes out today, but the comic. I'm going to preface this by saying that in all of the Marvel films so far, they've taken elements from the comics, but they've ultimately been different stories. The film Avengers Age of Ultron took aspects from the Age of Ultron comics, but was ultimately a different story altogether. There's nods and winks to the comic, but they've had to forge their own story. And so even though I'm going to be talking about the comic Civil War, you shouldn't think that anything I say is going to relate to the film. I've seen the film, and I'm not going to spoil it in any way. I'm not going to give away any spoilers. I'm not going to give like a knowing wink to the camera when I'm talking about a certain aspect of this, just going, wonder if that'll come up in the film. That would ruin it for people, and if I was watching that review, I'd get annoyed. I'm exclusively and only talking about this, not the film at all, don't worry. So first of all, I want to talk about the story. This was written by Mark Millar in 2007 as part of a wide-reaching story arc for the Marvel Universe. So even though this was published in the more mainstream comic issues every month, there were other issues of other comics which built into it. For example, I've read the X-Men tie-in to this. The story of Civil War is basically that there are two sides of the superhero community. One that believes that superheroes should be registered with the government and that there should be political oversight by the people, for the people, from the people. On the other side of the divide, there's superheroes who believe that there should be no government oversight on superheroes at all, and that they should be free to fight crime how they wish. They see what they do as being ultimately a choice, and that they're choosing to help people, and they don't want those terms to be dictated to them. In Civil War, this is the side that's led by Captain America, whereas Tony Stark leads the pro-registration side. So the way it starts is pretty weird. Marvel generally is a lot more, in a way, realistic to their version of the world that contains superheroes than DC. Even though DC is often seen as being more real world, especially with the Batman universe, Marvel embraces more modern aspects of the world and puts it into their comics. So this starts off with 4 superheroes, very like amateur, low-level superheroes, who are making like a reality TV series about themselves, which is quite an interesting idea, and it's quite nice how they explore these other aspects. Anyway, these 4 superheroes accidentally blow up a school, which you're not really seeing coming, because it's all quite lighthearted, and then suddenly, ooh, wow. It's a bit of a punch in the gut, and I think it's meant to be, because that's what gets a lot of superheroes, including Iron Man, and including the audience, to see that there is a need for registration, even though I find that the pro-registration side is a little bit more insidious, and Iron Man, to me, comes across as a bit less good than Captain America in this book. That being said, it's completely understandable where he's coming from, why he's motivated to join the government, and why he's motivated to fight his old friends. It's something that really hits him. It's not really explained why he responds so heavily to this incident, but it does at least absolve some of the bad things he does. Likewise, Captain America is absolved by the fact that you can understand why he's fighting registration, why he wants freedom. He uses the argument that if the government is controlling superheroes, they might dictate who's good and who's bad. So it's set up really nicely how both sides disagree ideologically. However, I don't really agree with how the fighting starts. There's a lot of similarities, I think, to The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman and Superman are fighting off against each other. This one, I feel, has higher stakes, because it's not just one person versus another person. It's a whole group of people who believe something different to a whole other group of people. I think that's quite a prevalent thing to think about, especially like today, what with the Civil War in Syria, and with the idea that ideology can be good or bad, and it's something we're seeing a lot of, and it's really good, I think, to read back through this and think about how do you tackle that? I mean, apart from just talking around a table and fighting, are there other ways to tackle the problem? I want to talk a little bit about the art. So I'm not a huge fan of the art with this book, mostly because I like my comic art to be mostly driven by the pencil artist and by the inker. I think that's mostly because I dabble a little bit in like comic art as a hobby, and I'm on the penciling inking side, and I can't colour in for shit. I like comic art with the penciling has a really individual style. You know, I like Brian Hitch, I like Greg Capullo, I like artists where just the pencil drawing or the ink to drawing, you can get almost everything from that, and the colour then just adds like a cherry on top. That's just my own sort of personal tastes. What I found with Civil War is that even though the pencil work is very good and the inking is very good, quite a lot of the quality comes from the colouring, which is good. It's a stupid thing to say, and I'm not dissing Steve McNiven, who's the pencil artist. He's still done a very good job, and it's a huge undertaking, like drawing almost every character in the Marvel Universe. His frame composition is really good, difference in characters is really nice. Jim Lee, who was doing Justice League a couple of years ago, he drew everyone very similar. Like, I really like his style, he heavily renders his work, but Batman, Superman, The Flash, Green Lantern, they were all kind of just the same. Like, he just drawn different costumes on them, in a way. Like, they had the same body shape and everything, whereas the characters here, they've all got very different body shapes, muscle mass. That being said, I just find it wasn't individual enough. It was very broad spectrum art. I don't know, again, not terribly a bad thing, and still very good, very talented. For me, for comic art to be special, it's got to be really individual. The colouring work is absolutely incredible for this. I'm absolutely stunned by the colour work by Maury Hollowell. Really intricate and smooth. It's all digitally done, but it's really polished and really nice. And I think the real talent in that is that Steve McNiven holds back some of his line work, especially around the face. So things like the nose, he'll do the nostrils and like the under bit of the nose, but leave everything else, so that the colourist can come along and digitally draw the nose with colour, so it looks a lot more realistic than if you had like a big black line going down. As I said, I kind of prefer the big black line going down because I like the pencil art and the inks to be dominant. Overall, I think this was a fantastic comic. This was the first big Marvel anthology book I'd ever bought. Mostly because I kind of wanted to get the most from my money, and I saw it and I was like, well, it's got loads of pages, and it's got loads of characters, and it's like £15, so that's good value for money. And I'm so glad I picked it up, because it introduced me to so many characters in Marvel that I'd never known about. In terms of the movie, if you've read this, don't expect it to be exactly the same, because the movies never are. There are differences. I think they did a very good job. I enjoyed the movie. That's all I'll say about it. Maybe in a couple of weeks I'll talk in more detail about Captain America Civil War, but I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it. If there's anything that you want to add to what I've said, then please comment below. I'd love to chat to people about this. Subscribe and like if you want, you don't have to. And thank you very much for watching.